Hello. So I'm guessing we're a room of developers, but let's talk about how we can be more than our code. So what does it mean to be a developer? It probably means you write code. So we live in a world of languages, programming languages, of course. We have frameworks, we have libraries, patterns, all that fun stuff. It's all very technical. So that probably means we need to focus, we need to work hard, we need to isolate ourselves. So we've got our headphones, we've got our corner, we're away from everyone, we can shut out the distractions. We can even put up walls around ourselves, give ourselves little quiet spaces where we can focus. It's quite clear where our place used to be. This is straight from the Wikipedia for Waterfall. So it's very clear. We've got requirements, someone does that up front. We've got design, someone does that for us. We come in around the middle, implementation, we build it. Then we've got a bunch of testers, they test it for us, and then someone has to maintain it, bad luck. So it's very clear what our role is. We've got a clear job to do. We're the builders, we build things in the middle. But we'd started to recognize flaws with this, and there's been a widespread move away from this towards Agile. So now we're Agile. So we've got a, we will have stand-ups, and we do all that fun stuff. We have user stories. They define value for us. We've got a definition of ready, because we're busy people. Don't give us stuff that's not ready to work on yet. We've got a definition of done, because then we can throw it over the fence. We've got a nice linear process. Everything works in stages. So we're somewhere in the middle. We even have things that are selected for development for us. It's awesome. So we've maybe got some columns that define our process. We've got some story points. We've got some velocity burn downs, maybe some burnouts if we're unlucky, but it's all good. We can track our metrics. This is a Git commit graph, so we can see who writes the most code, because if we're developers and we write code, then more code is better, right? So we've got this very efficient way of working where we can track who's the most effective at writing code, because that's clearly the most valuable thing we do. But we're kind of a bit resourcey in this world. So if it's just about the number of commits, then more developers means more commits. So if we can get more developers, then that's good. We can scale our team. We can just add more and more people. There's people in other countries who might do it for less money, though, so that's a bit of a thing. We've got quite high cost of living over here. People have lower cost of living. They might do it for less, so yeah, worry about that. We even have some nice industrial age factory metaphors baked in for us. So we've got our factory punch card. So are we just in a feature factory? So we've got meetings where people decide what to do. We've got a person who decides what order to do it in. We've got a UX person who deals with those pesky users. Then we're the genius builders. Tell us what to build and we'll build it. We'll do a great job for you. And then we ship it. And someone over here does something with it afterwards. But the decisions are not really made by the builders. The decisions are really made somewhere else. We just crank it out. So actually, that's maybe not so great. Maybe we can do a bit more than that. But it's a bit of a self-reinforcing loop. So if we act like code machines, we'll probably get treated like code machines. If we act like throughput is the most important thing, people will probably treat us like throughput's the most important thing. If we act like a commodity, we become a commodity. So how can we do things a bit better? So I'm Richard. I coach software teams. I coach mainly around two areas, architecture and delivery. I think they're absolutely linked. I'll put they're actually on every slide, so if you want to get in touch with me, there's plenty of ways to do so. So a while ago, I worked with two teams on actually quite similar projects. And it was quite an interesting case study for me. So both of these were retail companies. They both basically sold things and shipped them. One of these was a big company, one of the largest in Britain, actually. One of them actually had very high volume, but with very few employees. They had actually 10 employees. There's a big difference between the way these two groups worked. So one team had a very fancy office in the middle of London. It was very nice. All the developers had all the peace and quiet they could ever ask for. They had a warehouse, but that was down on the coast. Like, you had to go there on your first week for an induction, and everyone complained about it because it was a long train ride, and who wants to sit in a warehouse? It's not very interesting. You know, you could be writing code. That's one way of looking at it. The other group, we were all in the same building. It was the warehouse. Everybody knew what everybody else did. There was no secrets at all. And we made a point of spending time with people and understanding what they were actually doing. So I was a developer. I would spend time with the people in dispatch. I would see what it meant to ship a product. Like, what does it mean to find the right product for the right customer? What does it mean to send that in the right packaging? What does it mean to do everything related to dispatch? What does it mean to do goods in? You know, it's literally a lorry arrives with stuff on it. You have to put the stuff in the warehouse. That was actually a really interesting area. So that actually took a tenth of the company's people all the time working flat out just to keep up with goods coming back into the warehouse. What was really interesting here is that was a major pain point because there's not much value, like direct value, in putting things onto shelves. We're selling stuff. We want to be taking things off shelves because that's where the money is. So this was something that had to be done, but ideally it could take a bit less time. So because we as developers spent time with the end users, we were able to see some of the things that were going on. So we asked them, you know, what are you doing? And they told us what their current process was. So they literally had a van of stuff. They emptied the van out, and they knew what products should go where in the warehouse. So they had a corner of the warehouse where they pre-sorted the stuff that goes in the low number rows, the stuff that goes in the middle of the warehouse, the stuff that goes at the back of the warehouse. And that was a very, very time-intensive process. And then they grabbed the box for the front, and they put it in the right boxes in the actual warehouse, grabbed the box for the middle, took it around. Very, very time-intensive. OK, so why do you do that? Well, because the system makes us. There's no choice. OK, well, how would you like to work? Well, we'd like to just put it away. Just find a shelf where it fits, put it there. OK, well, why can't we do that? It turned out we could. So that used to be 10% of the company full-time. We halved that. They're actually at the stage where they're going to need to hire more people just to put goods away. Didn't need to do that anymore. It was nothing to do with code. It was just understanding the problem. We sat with the people doing the work. We showed them how it could be done. We did lots of workshops. We tried different ways of doing the same thing. We found things that worked, and we built them. All good fun. The London office team had the opposite experience. They still never went to the warehouse. They still never understood what was going on. They built a big system. It took a long time. And the users didn't really understand what the system was trying to do, because the people who wrote the system didn't really understand what the users were trying to do. So what can we learn from this? What can we do if we're in this situation where we're very much this end of the chain and we're just being told what the user, some mythical user that someone else has spoken to, if we've just been told what that person might want, how can we start changing this? So part of the problem actually comes from our education. So most of us are probably computer scientists. Scientists are very much taught about the solutions. We're taught about the science of understanding how to solve a thing. But we don't really spend much energy on the problem. So we're all about how to solve a problem. But we're not necessarily about why you're solving it in the first place, or understanding what business outcome you want in the first place. So we need to change the way we think about that. We need to go back to why. Why is the person doing this in the first place? What would make it easier to achieve the outcome they want? Which is not necessarily anything to do with database tables or anything technical. There's an actual person in the real world trying to get a job done. So spend time with them. See how that's done. See what they're actually doing. We isolate ourselves. We pretend that users are the distraction from the important stuff, but the users are the important stuff. Because if you're not building a system for someone, why are you building a system? So understand what people are currently doing to solve the problem they've got. What are the constraints that they've currently got? Are the constraints real? Are there some things that are unchangeable? Are there some things that you can change? If you took those restrictions away and people could do anything they liked, What would that mean? But you only understand this stuff if you actually spend time with the people directly. So we've put a lot of effort in software in putting layers between teams and the business, or teams and the customer. I think we should probably not do that. We should probably just go to people directly. You form a level of understanding that you never would otherwise. Listen when they tell you something. When you get some feedback, when you get an idea, when you get something that you maybe weren't even expecting to get, are you able to respond to it? So when you've really understood the problem someone has, you can start thinking about a solution. But share it with them as quickly as you can, so in the simplest possible form. So we literally use pieces of paper. We use sketches of the screens, we used sketches of the warehouse, we used sketches of a typical box of stuff, and we sketched it, and it took us minutes to do. There was no locking ourselves away writing code, we haven't got time for that. But we would literally sit in a room for an afternoon, working out ways that things work, but it was together, it was collaborative. So it was developers, it was people who would use the software afterwards. Harder to do if you're dealing with the public, but you need to get the best proxy you can possibly get. So this is where things like hallway testing or any kind of end-user testing you can get are great, but listen to it. So it doesn't have to involve code. Code takes time. What's the cheapest way you can see whether your solution solves the actual problem? And then you need to have the time and space to do that. So if you're planning a backlog years up front, you can't do this stuff. You need to be able to respond. You need to have space that you can ask people, what's the most important thing for you to do next? And then you can do that thing next. Not in 6 months when there's a gap in the roadmap, next. We need to break free from our job titles. So Agile talks about cross-functional teams, but I don't see that many actual cross-functional teams in practice. So cross-functional teams means that everyone's involved. So it's not like, he's the BA, he deals with customer, I'm the tester, I test stuff. No, everyone does everything. You're working together to ship value. So you're trying to do whatever's needed to do to get value to the customer now. Everyone needs to be well informed. There's no value in having a single product owner who decides for everyone what's the most important thing for the customer. You all need to be in the customer's head, so you can all know what's most valuable or important to the customer. So don't wall the customer off. Don't pretend they don't exist. Don't pretend your users aren't there. You need to make sure that you're coming out of your coding corner and engaging with these people. So the Agile principles can really help with these things. So a lot of organizations are trying to embrace Agile, but one of the problems that's hitting the whole industry is what's being called dark Agile. So you start seeing the founders of Agile writing things like Agile is dead, where the version of Agile they're seeing in the real world is nothing like what they envisaged. Agile is being seen as a delivery methodology. It's been seen as a way to get more throughput. That's not the point. It's not about building things faster and more efficiently and measuring everyone and having daily stand-ups, daily updates. No, it's about building the right thing. And you don't know what that is unless you understand what the customer wants. There's a bit of a renaissance movement around this, though. So I've deliberately put this up and left it so you can read it. If you have a look at the Modern Agile website, there's a lot of good stuff on there. It's an updated take on the original principles. But the original had this as well. So if we look at the original principles from the original manifesto, it talks about interactions and individuals over process and tools. Like this notion of a linear workflow, that's just come straight from Waterfall, but on a ticket-by-ticket basis. That's not what it's about. Everyone must be working together to understand what's going on. And you collaborate with people rather than negotiate. So you don't kind of try and sign off your requirements up front and then just knock them out. It's about understanding, really understanding what they want, why they want it, because you've collaborated. So what does it mean to be a developer? It means you need to understand what's needed. It means you need to work together to find solutions. It means you need to constantly improve, whether that's your processes, whether it's the code base, but actually, what you're really trying to improve is your end user's life. They have a problem, you're there to solve it. and then you deliver code. But really, we should be trying to deliver value. So that's me. If I can help you with anything, give me a shout, and I'll be around if you've got any questions. Thank you.